You know, when you shared these excerpts with me from Zelensky's interview with Lex Fridman, I was immediately struck by how different it felt from any other interview that I'd seen with him.
Yeah.
It wasn't the polished, soundbite-ready Zelensky that we usually see. This was something else, entirely
Yeah.
long, raw, deeply personal.
Yes, and I think that rawness is really key to understanding what makes this interview so fascinating. Zelensky's incredibly candid.
Yeah.
He switches between Ukrainian, Russian, even English,
Right.
cracks jokes, and at times you can practically feel the weight of the war on his shoulders.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's heavy.
And one thing that really stood out to me was his refusal to conduct the entire interview in Russian.
It's a powerful statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
It would have been easy for him to default to Russian,
Right.
a language he's fluent in and one that many Russians understand,
Yeah.
but he deliberately chose not to.
Exactly. It's like he's saying, this war is about more than just land. It's about our identity, our language, our very existence as Ukrainians.
And he makes that point explicitly.
Yeah.
He says that for Ukrainians, language has become a symbol of resistance, a way to assert their independence from Russian domination.
And then there's that chilling line where he says, they speak the language of weapons when talking about the Russians. It sends shivers down your spine, and it really sets the tone for the whole conversation.
It also underscores the emotional toll this war has taken on him.
Oh, yeah.
You can hear the anger, the resentment,
Yeah,
but also the deep sadness in his voice.
absolutely. And that sense of sadness really comes through when he talks about his family history, specifically his grandfather's experiences in World War II.
His grandfather's story is incredibly poignant.
It is.
To have your entire family executed by fascists during the occupation of Ukraine,
Right.
it's unimaginable. And it clearly shaped Zelensky's understanding of the horrors of war from a very young age.
You can really sense the weight of that history when he says that his grandfather, a man who dedicated his life to fighting injustice,
Right.
would never have believed this war was possible.
And it's almost as if history is repeating itself in this cruel twist of fate.
Yeah.
Zelensky even points out that both the 2022 invasion and the Nazi invasion of Ukraine in 1941 happened at around 4 a.m.
Wow.
Almost the same time.
It's a haunting parallel that underscores the cyclical nature of conflict, the way that past traumas can echo through generations.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, does humanity ever truly learn from its mistakes? But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Sure.
Let's talk about the moment that everything changed for Zelensky. The moment the 2022 invasion began.
He describes the initial missile strikes with a sense of shock and disbelief.
Yeah.
Almost as if he couldn't believe it was actually happening.
Right.
And then there's this immediate shift from father to president, from worrying about his own family to worrying about the fate of an entire nation.
It's incredible how he describes that transition.
Yeah.
That sudden realization that he was no longer just a father,
Right.
but the supreme commander, responsible for the lives of millions.
And one detail that really stuck with me was his phone call with Lukashenko, the leader of Belarus, right after the invasion began.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine?
The part where Lukashenko actually apologized
Yeah.
and claimed that Putin was launching missiles from Belarusian territory without his consent.
Right.
It's almost comical if it weren't so tragic.
Right. It highlights the complex web of relationships and betrayals that underpin this conflict.
And it really shows that, Zelensky even refers to Lukashenko as a murderer,
Yeah,
which shows you the level of anger and distrust he feels.
absolutely.
So, facing this unbelievable situation, what were Zelensky's immediate actions as the invasion unfolded?
Well, he focused on 3 key areas: distributing weapons to citizens, maintaining digital communication to counter Russian disinformation, and addressing the Russian people directly, appealing to their sense of humanity and urging them to oppose the war.
It's fascinating how he leveraged his experience in media and entertainment to navigate this crisis.
Yeah.
He understood the power of communication in a modern war, particularly the need to control the narrative.
He essentially weaponized his communication skills using social media and digital platforms to rally his people, maintain morale, and expose Russian lies. He really understood that in the 21st century, information warfare is just as important as conventional warfare.
Yeah.
Boots on the ground.
Absolutely. And that mastery of communication really comes through when the conversation shifts to his perspective on Putin himself.
He doesn't hold back.
No, he does not.
He describes Putin as someone who is deaf to pleas for peace,
Okay.
thrives on fear,
Yeah.
and is driven by a destructive ambition,
Right.
not unlike Hitler.
And then there's that memorable line where he compares Putin to a mammoth standing bare-assed,
Oh, yeah.
which is certainly not a flattering image.
Ew.
It's almost as if he's
Yeah.
using humor to cope with the sheer absurdity of the situation.
But beneath the humor, there's a deep sense of frustration
Mm-hmm.
and a complete lack of faith in Putin's sincerity.
Right.
This really comes through in the back and forth they have about whether Putin genuinely desires to end the war.
So does Zelensky believe that Putin wants peace?
He's deeply skeptical.
Okay.
He believes that Putin would exploit any ceasefire to regroup and eventually relaunch his attack.
Right.
He even points to his experience with the failed 2019 ceasefire agreement as evidence of Putin's untrustworthiness.
So it sounds like he's saying any talk of peace is pointless unless there are incredibly strong security guarantees in place, something that could actually prevent Putin from simply regrouping and attacking again.
Exactly. And his primary concern, the thing that keeps him up at night,
Yeah.
is the safety of the millions of Ukrainian children living in occupied territories. He's not willing to gamble with their lives.
Wow.
He needs to be absolutely certain that any peace deal would protect them.
That's understandable. So let's talk about the potential role of the U.S. and NATO
Okay.
in securing those guarantees.
Sure.
What's Zelensky's view on that?
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
He expresses a strong belief in Donald Trump's ability to influence Putin
Okay.
and potentially broker peace.
Wait, Trump? Really?
Yeah,
That's a bit surprising, considering their history.
it is.
You know, the impeachment and everything that happened between them.
It is a bit unexpected, right?
Yeah.
But Zelensky argues that Trump's peace through strength approach actually resonates with Putin.
Okay.
He believes that Putin respects strength and fears Trump's unpredictability.
So he's suggesting that Putin would be more willing to negotiate with Trump than with, say, Biden.
That seems to be his thinking.
Okay.
He even mentions his hope for a meeting with Trump soon after his inauguration,
Yeah.
suggesting that Trump himself sees this issue as a priority.
It's a gamble, for sure.
Yes.
Putting so much faith in a single individual,
Yeah,
especially someone as polarizing as Trump, seems incredibly risky.
it does. But Zelensky also acknowledges the complexities involved.
Okay.
He understands that any lasting peace agreement would require significant U.S. involvement, and he's a strong advocate for at least partial NATO membership for Ukraine,
Okay.
which he believes would act as a deterrent against future Russian aggression.
So he's putting a lot of hope on potential Trump presidency, but he's also being pragmatic about the need for U.S. support and the complexities of navigating international relations.
Right.
What about compromise? Is he willing to negotiate with Putin after all that's happened?
He is adamant that forgiveness for Russia's actions is impossible.
Wow.
He believes that what Russia has done is unforgivable, that the atrocities they've committed
Right.
cannot be simply swept under the rug.
So what does he propose? How can you negotiate peace without some degree of forgiveness or reconciliation?
Well, he suggests a rather unconventional strategy,
Okay.
using frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's military buildup.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand what exactly does he mean by frozen Russian assets?
Yeah.
And how would that work in practice?
He's referring to the billions of dollars in Russian assets
Okay.
that have been seized by Western governments in response to the invasion.
Okay.
These are things like bank accounts, property,
Right.
and even yachts owned by Russian oligarchs and entities tied to the Kremlin.
I see.
Zelensky's idea is that the U.S. could use these assets to bolster Ukrainian defenses, while simultaneously benefiting American industry.
Interesting.
It's a bold idea, to say the least.
It certainly is. But would that be enough to deter future Russian aggression? Or would it just escalate tensions further and push Putin into a corner?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And it leads us to another critical issue,
Mm-hmm.
the impact of martial law on Ukrainian society.
Right. We know that martial law has been in effect since the invasion began. But what are the long-term consequences of that?
Yeah.
How is the war affecting Ukrainian democracy?
Martial law has led to the suspension of elections
Right.
and the curtailment of certain freedoms.
Of course.
It's a necessary trade-off in wartime,
Yeah.
but it does raise concerns about the balance between security and liberty,
Sure.
and how long those restrictions can remain in place without eroding democratic norms.
So what's Zelensky's perspective on that? How does he reconcile the need for security with the preservation of democratic values?
He acknowledges the difficult choices he's had to make, but he's committed to restoring full democratic processes once the war ends.
Okay.
He sees it as a temporary measure,
Right.
a necessary evil,
Yeah.
to ensure the survival of Ukraine as a free and independent nation.
Well, what about his own political future?
Yeah.
Will he run for re-election once martial law is lifted?
He's actually uncertain about that.
Oh, really? He emphasizes his current focus on ending the war and rebuilding Ukraine.
Okay.
He says he hasn't given much thought to his own political ambitions.
Yeah.
Especially amidst all the chaos and uncertainty.
I can understand that. With everything going on, who has time to think about re-election campaigns? Now, before we move on, there's one more issue I think we need to address.
Okay.
The persistent allegations of corruption in Ukraine, particularly in the context of wartime aid.
It's a sensitive topic,
It is.
but one that we can't ignore.
No.
Figures like Donald Trump and Elon Musk have both raised concerns about corruption in Ukraine,
Yeah.
questioning whether aid money is being used effectively and transparently.
So how does Zelensky respond to those accusations? How does he defend Ukraine's handling of the massive influx of international aid?
Well, he defends Ukraine's robust anti-corruption system,
Okay.
highlighting his administration's efforts to eliminate oligarchic influence and root out corruption at all levels of government.
He even points to the imprisonment of Ihor Kolomoisky, a powerful oligarch, as proof of their commitment to fighting corruption.
That's a pretty strong example. I mean, Kolomoisky was a major player in Ukrainian politics and finance.
He was.
To see him in prison does send a message.
It does.
But what about concerns about U.S. companies potentially profiting from the war effort? Is he worried about that?
He actually expresses frustration about that.
He does.
He shares an anecdote about how he was denied the opportunity to use Ukrainian cargo jets to transport U.S. weapons.
Wow.
Suggesting that U.S. companies were lobbying for those contracts,
Right.
potentially at the expense of Ukrainian efficiency and security.
So he's not afraid to call out potential corruption,
No.
even when it involves powerful allies like the U.S.?
He's not.
That's pretty gutsy.
It shows his commitment to transparency and accountability. He's not willing to let anyone exploit the situation,
Right.
even those who are providing vital support.
Speaking of allies, I think it's time we talk about Zelensky's perspective on Elon Musk.
Right.
It's a complex relationship, to say the least.
It is. On one hand, Zelensky expresses immense gratitude for the role Starlink has played in keeping Ukraine connected to the world,
Right.
particularly the vital internet access it's provided to schools, hospitals, and the military.
Right. Starlink has been a game changer in terms of allowing Ukrainians to communicate,
Yeah,
organize, and stay informed, even in the midst of war.
absolutely. And Zelensky even extends a personal invitation to Musk to visit Ukraine firsthand
Wow.
and witness the impact of his technology.
So he's acknowledging the crucial role Musk has played in supporting Ukraine, but there's also that underlying tension stemming from Musk's sometimes controversial statements and his proposals for peace negotiations that many Ukrainians see as favoring Russia.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act.
Yep.
Zelensky clearly appreciates the assistance Musk has provided, but he's also wary of Musk's influence and his potential to undermine Ukrainian interests.
It's a reminder that even in wartime, alliances are complex
They are.
and often fraught with tension. So with all of that said, where does Zelensky see Ukraine headed in the future? What's his vision for the country once the war is finally over?
He's remarkably optimistic.
Really?
He emphasizes the importance of digitalization,
Okay.
economic reforms, and attracting foreign investment.
Okay.
He sees Ukraine as having the potential to become a European powerhouse,
Wow.
a hub for technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship.
That's a bold vision,
It is.
considering the scale of destruction and the challenges ahead.
It is.
What specific areas does he see as having the most potential for growth?
He highlights green energy, technology, and resource development as key sectors where Ukraine could flourish. He also mentions vast reserves of oil, gas,
Right.
gold, and uranium.
It sounds like he's painting a picture of a Ukraine that's not only rebuilt, but transformed. A country that leverages its resources and its human capital to become a leader in the global economy.
Right.
But can that vision be realized?
It's an ambitious goal, no doubt.
Yeah.
But Zelensky believes it's achievable. He has this unwavering faith in the resilience of the Ukrainian people,
Right.
their ability to overcome adversity and rebuild their nation.
Yeah.
And he believes that the world will be there to support them,
Okay.
to invest in their future, and to help them create a new Ukraine that's stronger, more prosperous, and more democratic than ever before.
It's a powerful message of hope.
It is.
A vision of a future where Ukraine not only survives, but thrives.
Yeah.
But it's a future that's still very much in doubt.
It is.
The war continues, the outcome is uncertain, and the path ahead is fraught with danger and uncertainty.
It is. And I think that's what makes Zelensky's perspective so compelling. He's not sugarcoating the challenges. He's not shying away from the harsh realities of war. But he's also refusing to give in to despair. He's holding on to hope, and he's inspiring others to do the same.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, leadership matters.
It does.
And that vision, courage, and resilience can make a difference.
Absolutely. And as we delve deeper into Zelensky's words, as we explore his thoughts on Putin, Trump, the future of Ukraine, and the complexities of war and peace, I think we'll gain an even deeper understanding of the challenges and possibilities of leadership on the world stage. We'll uncover the strategies, the compromises, and the unwavering determination that have shaped his journey from comedian to wartime leader, from unlikely hero to global icon.
That's a great point. We'll continue our deep dive into this fascinating interview in just a moment.
You know, as we go deeper into this interview, what strikes me is the contrast between Zelensky's optimism about the future and the sheer weight of the present. You can practically hear the fatigue in his voice, the burden of leadership in wartime.
It's true. He even talks about how he's had to put aside his role as a father to focus on leading his nation. It makes you realize the personal sacrifices involved, the toll this conflict is taking on him, not just as a president, but as a human being.
And yet there are these moments of humor, these flashes of his comedic background that peek through. It's almost as if he's using humor as a coping mechanism, a way to maintain some semblance of normalcy in the face of the unimaginable.
It's a fascinating paradox. He's leading his country through an existential crisis, facing down a nuclear-armed aggressor. And yet, he still manages to crack a joke, to tell a self-deprecating story. I think that's part of what makes him so relatable, so human.
Absolutely. It's that authenticity that resonates with people. He's not a distant figurehead. He's a man who's grappling with the same fears and anxieties that we all are, albeit on a much grander scale.
And he's not shying away from criticizing those he feels haven't done enough to support Ukraine.
No, not at all.
He's particularly critical of some Western leaders who were hesitant to impose sanctions on Russia before the invasion, arguing that their inaction emboldened Putin.
That's a key point, isn't it?
It is.
He's essentially saying that the world's hesitancy to confront Putin early on contributed to the current crisis, and it highlights the tension between real politics and moral imperatives on the global stage.
It's a reminder that international relations are often driven by self-interest and pragmatism. Rather than lofty ideals. And Zelensky, thrust into this role he never sought, is forced to navigate that complex web of competing interests while fighting for the survival of his nation.
He's walking a tightrope.
He is.
On one hand, he needs to secure international support and military aid, which often involves diplomacy and compromise.
Of course.
On the other hand, he's facing immense pressure from his own people, who are understandably demanding a decisive victory, a clear defeat of the Russian aggressor.
Let's go back to Zelensky's belief that Donald Trump might be the key to unlocking a peace deal with Putin. Do you think that's realistic? It seems like a long shot, considering their history.
It does.
And the fact that Trump himself is a highly polarizing figure.
It's definitely a gamble. But I think Zelensky is looking at it from a strategic perspective. He seems to believe that Trump's unpredictability, his willingness to break with conventional norms, might be the only way to shake things up and force Putin to make concessions.
But isn't that a risky strategy? Trump has been accused of being too cozy with Putin, of undermining NATO, and of prioritizing his own personal interests over the interests of U.S. allies.
It's a valid concern. And it speaks to the difficult choices Zelensky is facing. He's desperate for a solution, for a way to end the bloodshed and secure a future for his country. And in Trump, he sees someone who, despite his flaws, might be able to break through the stalemate and achieve what others haven't.
It's a fascinating, if somewhat unsettling thought, that the fate of Ukraine might rest on the shoulders of someone like Donald Trump. But putting aside the Trump factor for a moment, What does Zelensky see as the non-negotiables in any potential peace deal? What are the red lines he won't cross?
He's been very clear about that Ukraine will never cede territory to Russia.
Wow.
That's a fundamental principle he won't budge on.
Okay.
He also insists on strong security guarantees to prevent future aggression. He knows that any peace deal that leaves Ukraine vulnerable to another invasion is no peace deal at all.
And what about the millions of Ukrainians living in occupied territories? What happens to them?
That's a major concern for Zelensky.
Yeah.
He's adamant about ensuring their safety and well-being, their right to return to their homes, and their access to essential services. He's also mindful of the potential for ethnic cleansing and forced displacement. And he's determined to prevent that from happening.
It sounds like he's trying to find a balance between protecting Ukraine's sovereignty and ensuring the safety and dignity of all Ukrainian citizens, regardless of where they live. It's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
And it's one that will require not just military strength, but also diplomatic finesse and a deep understanding of the human cost of war.
And that human cost is never far from Zelensky's mind. Even as he talks about strategy and geopolitics, you can sense his empathy for those who have lost loved ones, those whose lives have been upended by the conflict. He's not just a wartime leader. He's a man who understands the pain and suffering this war has inflicted on his people.
And that understanding is what makes his vision for the future of Ukraine so compelling. He's not just talking about rebuilding what was lost. He's talking about creating something new, something better.
His emphasis on digitalization is particularly interesting.
It is.
He sees it not just as a way to modernize Ukraine's economy, but also as a way to empower citizens, to reduce corruption, and to create a more transparent and accountable government.
It's like he's saying that technology can be a tool for democratization. A way to build a more just and equitable society. And it ties in with his vision of Ukraine as a hub for innovation and entrepreneurship, a place where young people can create the future they want.
Exactly. He's not content with simply restoring the status quo. He wants to leapfrog ahead to build a Ukraine that's a model for the 21st century, a country that's both technologically advanced and deeply committed to democratic values.
It's an ambitious vision.
It is.
But it's one that resonates with many Ukrainians, especially young people, who see this war as an opportunity to break with the past and create a better future.
And it's a vision that will require significant investment, both from within Ukraine and from the international community. Zelensky is essentially making a pitch to the world.
He is.
Invest in Ukraine now, and you'll be investing in a country with a bright future, a country that will be a vital player in the global economy.
He's highlighting Ukraine's vast natural resources, its strategic location, and its highly educated workforce as key assets that make it an attractive destination for foreign investment. It's almost like he's positioning Ukraine as the next big thing.
He is.
The place to be for businesses and entrepreneurs who are looking for opportunities in a rapidly changing world.
And he's tying Ukraine's economic future to its democratic future. He's arguing that a strong, prosperous, and democratic Ukraine is in everyone's best interest. It's a bulwark against Russian aggression, a model for other countries in the region, and a valuable partner for the West.
It's a compelling argument.
It is.
But the question remains, can he deliver on that promise? Can he rebuild Ukraine while simultaneously fighting a war, navigating complex geopolitical tensions, and managing the expectations of both his own people and the international community?
It's a daunting challenge, to say the least. But I think Zelensky's leadership style, his combination of resilience, pragmatism, and unwavering optimism, gives him a fighting chance. He's not afraid to take risks. He's willing to make tough choices. And he's constantly looking for ways to leverage Ukraine's strengths and turn adversity into opportunity.
He's also shown a remarkable ability to connect with people. To inspire them with his words and actions. And that ability to rally support, both at home and abroad, will be crucial to Ukraine's success in the long run.
Absolutely. Wars are won not just on battlefields, but also in the hearts and minds of people. And Zelensky seems to understand that He's fighting a war of ideas just as much as he's fighting a conventional war.
And that war of ideas extends beyond Ukraine's borders.
It does.
He's challenging the global order,
He is.
questioning the effectiveness of international institutions,
Right.
and demanding a more just and equitable world where aggression is met with decisive action, and where democracies stand united against tyranny. He's raised the bar for what it means to be a leader in the 21st century.
He has. He's become a symbol of resistance, a voice for the voiceless, and an embodiment of the human spirit's capacity for courage and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds.
Yeah.
And as we listen to his words,
Right.
we can't help but be drawn in by his passion, his determination, and his unwavering belief in a better future for Ukraine and the world.
It's remarkable to think about, Zelensky's journey from actor and comedian to wartime leader.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a movie.
Did you know there's that old saying, life imitates art?
Right.
In Zelensky's case, his background in entertainment, his understanding of storytelling and connecting with an audience has turned out to be a vital asset in this conflict.
He's a natural communicator.
He is.
And in a war that's being fought as much on social media and in the court of public opinion as it is on the battlefield,
Right.
that skill has been absolutely crucial.
It's not just about charisma, though.
Right.
Zelensky has been incredibly strategic in using those communication skills to control the narrative, to counter Russian disinformation, and to rally international support for Ukraine.
Yeah.
He's essentially fighting back against Putin's propaganda machine with humor.
Yeah.
With raw emotion,
Right.
with carefully crafted messages that cut through the noise and resonate with people around the world.
And he's doing all of this while under immense pressure.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this isn't a hypothetical war game.
Right.
This is real life with real bombs falling on real cities, with real people dying every day.
Absolutely. The weight of responsibility on his shoulders is unimaginable.
Yeah, it is.
And yet he continues to project this sense of calm.
He does.
Of determination, of unwavering belief in the ultimate victory of Ukraine.
Yeah.
He's become a symbol of defiance, a beacon of hope in a world that often feels consumed by darkness.
I think a lot of people, myself included, look at Zelensky and wonder, where does that strength come from?
Yeah.
How does he keep going?
It's a question that's difficult to answer.
Yeah.
But I think part of it comes from his deep connection to the Ukrainian people.
Right.
He's not leading from some ivory tower.
No.
He's in the trenches with them, sharing their struggles, their fears, their hopes.
He's also not afraid to challenge the status quo, to call out hypocrisy,
Right.
to demand more from the world.
That's right. He's not content with simply accepting the world as it is. He's pushing for a new world order.
Right.
One where international law is actually enforced.
Yeah.
Where aggressors are held accountable and where democracies stand united against tyranny.
Powerful stuff.
He's raised the bar for what it means to be a leader in the 21st century.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Zelensky's words and his vision for Ukraine, what does this all mean for us?
Right.
What can we take away from this?
I think it challenges us to re-examine our own assumptions about leadership, about courage, about the power of resilience. Yeah.
Zelensky's story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, one person can make a difference. One voice can inspire millions.
Right.
One act of defiance can change the course of history.
It also reminds us that freedom isn't free, that democracy is fragile, and that we all have a responsibility to stand up for what we believe in.
Absolutely.
To speak out against injustice and to support those who are fighting for their lives and their freedom.
Exactly. And as we continue to watch this conflict unfold,
Right.
as we grapple with the complexities of war and peace, I think it's important to remember the human cost of this war.
Right.
The lives lost.
Yeah.
The families shattered. The dreams put on hold.
Of course.
And to ask ourselves, what can we do to make a difference? How can we contribute to building a world where such tragedies are less likely to occur?
It's a question that doesn't have easy answers.
It doesn't.
But it's a question that Zelensky's story compels us to ask.
It does.
And perhaps in seeking those answers, in engaging with these difficult questions,
we can find our own sense of purpose and make our own small contribution to a more just and peaceful world.
We can start by amplifying the voices of those who are fighting for freedom,
Right.
by supporting humanitarian efforts, by demanding that our leaders do more to hold aggressors accountable,
Right.
and by never forgetting the lessons of this conflict, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring power of hope, even in the face of overwhelming adversity.
You provided some incredible source material that gave us a glimpse into the mind of a wartime leader.
Yeah.
Zelensky's story is far from over.
It's not.
And his journey from unlikely hero to global icon,
Right.
from comedian to the embodiment of a nation's resistance, is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, humanity's capacity for courage, resilience, and hope can shine through.
It's a story that will continue to unfold in the years to come, and it's a story that I believe will continue to inspire and challenge us long after this conflict has ended.